Hey everybody, what's happening? What's cracking? It's a special day today. It's Mother's Day. And I'm a mother of two, but happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. Happy Mother's Day. I have to speak from the heart. I have to speak with all of my heart. I just have to collect myself towards myself and not do it for, it has to be like a healing opportunity for me, a Thanksgiving opportunity for me, just being grateful. And hopefully that there are a few of you out there that can relate to my story. So, there's something about a mother that hums underneath her breath. When you look at my mother now, she's 60, in her late 60s. But she's very short lady. But when you look at her face, beautiful, big eyes. But you can see that she looks tired. But, and understandably so. You know, I didn't have a relationship with my mom like it was supposed to be, simply because my mother is a Zimbabwean woman from the farms. She came to the city when she was beautiful and young, and my father, who was abroad during the apartheid era. The apartheid era, went abroad, came back through Africa, and then met my mother. And met my mom. Okay. Met my mom in the city, and my mom was just 19 years old. So, and there's this handsome man from who was in exile for 29 years, comes to Zimbabwe, meets my mother. This was my mother's first boyfriend, who became husband immediately. And the only, my mom is such a submissive woman that through it all, she stuck with my dad and only knew my dad until his passing in the late 90s. And she never remarried again. I have a lot of siblings, a lot. And out of all those siblings, let's just say, with my father, we had a very tough upbringing. I'll just talk for myself. So, very tough upbringing. I do not regret any of it. Now that I'm a mother myself, now that I am a woman myself, God does not give you parents. It's all in God's planning. So my mother is from a very hard working background in the farms, with a big faith. So when I was growing up, I grew up in Pretoria, and it was during the apartheid era when it was just about to finish. So with my father's power and strength and persistence, and authority, he was able to then move us into an all-white neighborhood back then, which was Sunnyside. And then we moved to Central Pretoria. But growing up for me, I always grew up around white people. So you adapt what you see. Listen to me now. You adapt what you see, right? Because that is your surroundings. Unfortunately, in those circumstances, a lot happened to me where I was molested by a neighbor from a young age, which I then rebelled. And because of the fact that my father was an elderly man, huge gap difference between him and my mother, a huge gap difference. He aged quite quickly, meaning that he couldn't provide. So my mother had to then be the provider. There's something about a woman that comes from a very strong background. Poverty did strike in my family because my father had no longer that power that he then had before, where he had power beyond human understanding. But now at his older age, because of the choices he made, his youngest children, which is me included, we had to pay the price. So my mother became a home nurse with the little education that she had. She worked for Red Cross, meaning she was gone 7 days a week. Sometimes she will have to work day shift and night shift at people's homes to look after their sickly patients. So here we are, myself and my youngest siblings. While my oldest siblings, they're all old enough to look after themselves. Some of them lived abroad and some of them just educated backgrounds. But because we grew up, even though we lived in the suburbs, we lived in a place called the Salvation Army. And we were the only family living, not just the family, the only black family living in that institution. And it wasn't, Salvation Army back then wasn't for poor white people. It was just mentally disturbed. It was almost like Vescopes, you know. So a lot happened in my childhood where I then had to take care of myself. So obviously a lot of things happened in my childhood, a lot of trauma after trauma after trauma. I and my brother, who is late, who I celebrated his birthday this week, he would have been 37. I'm turning 40 soon. I'm 39 now, so I know he's 2 years younger than me. He died from a drug overdose. And he died in my mother's arms. He died in my mother's arms. This woman is a woman that when we just moved to South Africa, my father had disappeared for a year. We did not know where my father was. And every morning, in the morning, my mom would leave 4 o'clock in the morning. We did not know where she went to. For a year, she was visiting my father in jail in prison, because of the politics that took place and just choices that was made those days. So, and from that, she had troubled children. The only children that my mother, the only child that my mom sort of had under her wing was her last born. He was very sheltered. He was very sheltered. I think my mom felt that I'm losing these 2 children. I'm going to shelter the youngest. So he was sheltered. Me and my late brother, we were not. We looked after ourselves. So for a long time, I could not connect with my mother because she wasn't there. She was at work doing what she had to. But because of that choice that she took, that if I don't go and get this job as a breadwinner, my children would starve. So because of that, I did not have that intimate relationship with her. But I was such a rebellious child. I began using narcotics from a very tender age of 11 and 12. Very hard drugs, very hard drugs. Got involved with a very fast life, very fast. I knew millions of people. I was the queen of my castle. I was so matured at a very tender age. I had my own place. I was in steady relationships. But the mind was troubled. Very troubled mind. Very troubled mind. It got so troubled that in my 20s, it became worse. The fact that people always tend to think whatever happens to you when you're a lot younger, because you are surviving, you do not go to feel the trauma of it. You just think you're in a survival mode. This is life. But the older you get, the demons begin to play with your feelings and mind, and you begin to act out. And that's what happened to me when I was in my 20s, where I began to be melancholy. And I chose a drug that took me on a very wrong path, where I lost everything. 3 years I became melancholy, that I found myself lost and dead. My children always ask me, why is it that I love God so much? Why is it that I love God so much? I said, because I was dead. I was dead. And He took me from the ashes. Now, this is the part where I want to embrace my mother for the choices that she made, because she did the best that she could with the situation. 3 years of me being disappeared, my mom did not stop praying for her children. 2 of her children were taken by the world. Taken by the world. 2 of her children. My mother's prayers is what saved my life. Is what saved my life. I remember I came back from the 3 years of being melancholy and completely dead. I was literally the walking dead. That is why, until you've been in somebody's shoes, don't be so quick to judge because of their actions. Pray for them so that they can heal. Pray for them. Pray for them. My mother's prayers is what finally brought me back home, which was the Project Flats. That when you open the door, it's just poverty on another level. Poverty. But I'm grateful because we had a roof over our head. I was sitting on the floor after disappearing for 3 years. I was 23 years old. Nobody knew where I was. Nobody knew where I was. 3 years of complete madness. That's why if you carry a light, the enemy is here to kill and destroy. So if you carry a light, you got to be prepared to be a soldier. A warrior. Because of my mother's prayers, I found myself knocking back at her door. My brother, my late brother, opened the door, and he said that he was locked in by my mother because my mother locked him in so that he must not leave the premises to go and get high and use drugs. And she went to the police station to go report me missing. I remember as I was lying there, on the floor with this iron gate and my brother was on the other side of the gate. We are talking to one another, completely lost. Drugs had taken a hold of us, and we are just dead. As I waited for my mother to come, and the lost prodigal daughter has now arrived back home, I see my mother. I'll never forget that look. The tired look that she had in her eyes and her face. Because there she was trying to protect her children. And God had answered her prayers. And she saw her daughter lying on the floor after 3 years of disappearance. There I was lying with a pregnant stomach. A child that I got from a thug. From a thug. Immediately my mom's efforts and the Holy Spirit spoke to my mother and said, take this child back home to your roots and leave her there for 3 months. And that's what my mother did. She took me back to Zimbabwe. Nobody knew that I was pregnant. I didn't know that I was pregnant myself. She left me for 3 months and came back to look after the other one, the other lost one. I thank God for my little brother Logic, he always studied. He was a good boy. He was not like us because my mom sheltered him. Logic, I applaud you from all the good choices that you made through all the difficult times that we had growing up. I applaud you, my little brother, and I respect you. Stayed in Zimbabwe for 3 months at the farms. I began to do things their way. They got up every morning, every night they prayed. I would go and sleep on my grandmother's graveyard. I would go cold turkey from all the drugs that I used. People thought that I was going to hike back to South Africa, but I didn't. I stayed for 3 months. When I got back eventually to South Africa, we found out that I was 5 months pregnant. So God had a plan for me. If it was not for my mother making that choice to take me to Zimbabwe, back to her roots. I remember we took a train and we were sleeping on the floor, on the ground at the petrol station. And I was just, because I've always been this diva, this fabulous girl. But the drugs knocked me down, that I lost everything. I lost everything. So here I am, sleeping on the station. My mom sleeping on a cold station. We hiking, trying to get into tracks and just to get to her destination, her farms, the farms where she's from. That's what my mom had to sacrifice. That's what my mother had to sacrifice. If it wasn't for my mother, I wouldn't be alive. If it wasn't for my mother, the reason why I stopped living that life is because the minute that I found out that I was pregnant with my firstborn, I decided to make a choice that I might be killing myself, but this child in me, I have to give this child a chance in life. So I stayed with my mother for 9 months while she went to work. She fed me, looked after me. And there's something about a black woman. Sorry, not to make this a race thing, but I'm speaking from my cultural background. My mother, she gets up 5 o'clock. She gets up early every morning till this day. And she's hums. There's something about when you hum. And I've noticed the older I'm getting, I used to look like my father. I'm beginning to look like my mother. My brother Strategy once asked me this, that, out of all the children, you were the troubled, the most the most broken one, that we actually thought that you were going to die. Not knowledge, you were going to die. But somehow you managed to hold down your marriage. You managed to be a good mother to your children. And I started remembering that even though, listen to this and take this in, mothers, it's very important that your children see what you're doing. Because trust me, the only reason that I'm able to hold on to my marriage, the only reason that I'm able to have the strength as a mother, have a strength as a wife, if you look at me, you wouldn't say that that's in my nature. I'm a bit outgoing, tattoos, I'm that girl. I'm that girl. But yet, I managed to hold a home. It doesn't make sense from being that girl, you know what I mean? But then there's this other side of you, this womanness of you. That's because when I was younger, I used to walk past my mother, go to my friends to get high, and it was just party time. But each time I left the house, my mom would be humming a song, cleaning the house, cleaning whatever. Even though we grew up in poverty, she would clean that house. She would get up and she would cook. She would get up and she would go to work. Even though there was just trouble and pain around her, my mother always got up. Hard-working woman. And she always hummed. There's something about a woman that hums spiritual songs. And I've noticed I started doing that. I hum a lot now. And you will hear, I remember it was always spiritual songs, meaning through the pain and through it all, she's worshiping her God. She's worshiping her God. That's why my mom, till today, if you go to my mother's house, you will hear her humming. A mother. Everything that I do now, that I can get up and work hard, even though my past was troubled, everything I've learned from my mother. My mother was such a submissive woman. That is why I've kept my marriage for so long. It's got nothing to do with my power. It's because of seeing my mother's ways. She's in my lineage. I carry my mother's blood. Therefore, I can have those roles. That is why, as Coco for Coco Pops that I can be, as out there as I can be, there's times where I then take what I've seen my mom doing while I was growing up, and I apply them in my life. Mother, I thank you. All the children that you've raised, on behalf of them, thank you, Ma. Thank you, Ma. Thank you for the prayer warrior that you are. You are amazing, Ma. You are amazing. So I'm going to leave you with those good people, right? Be positive mothers, because children mimic what they see. Children, I am quite strict with my children. I put down discipline, but from a very loving perspective. And I'm telling you, when they grow up, they will remember that my mother was like this, my mother did that, my mother did this. I am who I am today, even though my story has been of a troubled, my canvas, my old canvas was just dark. It now carries light because of my mother's prayers. Mosadi wa mo Afrika. Mosadi wa mo Afrika. Your strength is in my blood. I have made it and I'm still making it and I'm learning. I'm a scholar of life. But I've learned so much from you. Even though I do not show it in my actions, I cannot wait to show you how grateful I am. Thank you, Mother. Thank you. To all the mothers out there, happy Mother's Day. And be proud of yourselves. It's not easy. My oldest one's a teenager now. She's turning 14. If there's anyone that was a rebel, I'll take the cup. But I think I had to walk through that journey so that if it happens within my children, and I'm so grateful to God that I have very good children. Mothers, don't give up on yourselves. Don't give up on yourself. If you had bad experiences with your mothers, some of you that resent your mothers, and you can't find the positive, there's a reason why your mother was your mother. There's a reason why your father was your father. Take the positives and use them for your ability. Peace and light.